The light in unseen places. We live in a world that celebrates the grand, the loud, the extraordinary. We're taught to look upward, for titles, applause, recognition. But in the quiet corners of our lives, in dusty hallways and overlooked people, miracles unfold silently. The miracle of the ordinary is not a story of fame or fortune. It is the story of Ada, a humble school custodian, whose hands never held a microphone, whose name was never printed in bold, yet whose quiet compassion shaped an entire generation. This is a story for those who've ever felt invisible. For the ones who love without being asked, who show up when it's hard, who carry pain in silence yet still choose kindness. It's for the broken who heal others while waiting to be healed, for the weary souls who wipe away tears that are not their own. Through Ada's eyes, we see a truth that defies the noise of the world, that love does not need a stage, that healing does not require headlines, and that sometimes the most powerful lives are the ones lived in service to others. This story will stir your emotions, challenge your assumptions, and awaken a forgotten wisdom, that the ordinary is not ordinary at all. Story time. The miracle of the ordinary, the Dar, woman in the beige sweater marigold, was a town the world forgot. Nestled between rolling hills and a forgotten highway, it was the kind of place where nothing ever happened, where the biggest excitement was the annual pie bake-off at the community center. People lived here because their parents had, and their parents before them. Change was a stranger in Marigold, so was attention. But every morning, before the town stirred, before the bakery unlocked its doors or the old church bells struck 6, a woman in a faded beige sweater would step out of her modest cottage on Elm Street. Her name was Ada. She was not the kind of woman who turned heads. There was nothing striking about her appearance. Gray hair pinned into a bun, round glasses always a little smudged, shoes worn down from years of walking the same cracked sidewalks. Her back bent slightly, the way time bends even the strongest among us. And yet something about her presence was different, not loud, not visible, but undeniable. Like a scent you can't place but never forget. She walked the same path every morning, down Elm, past the church, then onto Maple Street, where the school sat waiting for the sun. She carried a cloth bag slung over her shoulder, filled with small, quiet things. A thermos of tea, a jar of dog biscuits, folded tissues, a book of poems, a needle and thread. Tools, perhaps, for mending things most people didn't see as broken. To the children at Marigold Elementary, she was Miss Ada, the cleaner. She wasn't on the front page of the newsletter. She wasn't invited to school board meetings. But she was there, always there, before the first bell. After the last, she swept floors and polished windows. But she also listened. She watched. She noticed. She noticed when Carla stopped laughing. She noticed when Mr. Bell, the janitor, started parking farther away from the building to cry in his truck. She noticed the way little Ruby never made eye contact and never spoke, even when spoken to. She noticed things others missed, not because she was nosy, but because she cared, truly, deeply, fiercely. But Ada didn't intervene with speeches. She didn't announce her concern. She didn't gossip in whispers in the teacher's lounge. Ada had a different kind of power. The kind of power that lives in quiet acts of compassion. The kind of power that doesn't need applause to feel complete. One morning, as she unlocked the front doors of the school, a cat followed her in. It was ragged, one ear clipped, limping slightly. Most would have shooed it away. Ada scooped it into her arms without hesitation. She didn't flinch at the fleas or the dirt. She held the cat like something sacred. "Everyone's got something they're carrying," she murmured, as if speaking to the cat or to herself. "But you're still worthy of love." She named him Patch. He slept in the supply closet and waited for her outside each classroom as she cleaned. The children began to look for him. Somehow through that scarred little cat, Ada became visible. On the way to school, she would often stop by a small garden bed just outside the church and tend to the withering marigolds. No one asked her to. She simply did. She believed things deserved to bloom, even in forgotten places. Ada didn't talk much about her past. No one knew if she had children of her own or a family elsewhere. Her home was filled with secondhand furniture, worn books, and handwritten notes taped to mirrors. Notes like, Be gentle. Everyone is grieving something. Love is louder than silence. Ordinary does not mean unimportant. And maybe that was the miracle of Ada. She never tried to change the world. She just tried to love what was already in it. People, cats, withering flowers, broken children, the exhausted and the overlooked. It would be easy to dismiss her as lonely, or eccentric, or just a background character in the town's slow-moving play. But the truth was more powerful than that. Ada had chosen her life. Chosen simplicity, chosen presence. And one day, when her time came and her house fell quiet, Marigold would remember her not as a cleaner or a cat rescuer, but as something far more rare. The woman who made ordinary a miracle. The note in Carla's backpack. Carla was 8 years old the first time she lied about the bruise under her eye. "It was the dog," she said when her teacher asked. "I got too close while he was eating." The teacher nodded, unsure but helpless. Carla's eyes didn't flinch. She had practiced that lie in the mirror the night before, after her stepfather had thrown the remote across the room and it hit her cheekbone. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. No one pressed her. In towns like Marigold, people were kind, but cautious. They believed in giving people space, in letting others sort out their troubles in private. But privacy can be a hiding place for pain, and pain doesn't just sit quietly. It seeps into everything. Carla had grown quieter in class. She flinched when others shouted. Her drawings darkened. Houses without doors, skies without color. But the grown-ups were busy. Test scores, lesson plans, field trips. No one truly saw her. Not until Ada. Ada saw the little things. The way Carla folded into herself during lunch. How her shoulders hunched like she was trying to disappear. One day, while emptying the trash near Carla's desk, Ada noticed something odd. Carla had scribbled on the corner of her notebook, "Nobody sees me." It was enough. Ada didn't ask questions. She didn't march Carla to the office or call child services. She simply did what she always did, something quiet. Something human. The next morning, Carla found a note in her backpack. It wasn't signed. It wasn't dramatic. It was handwritten on lined paper that smelled faintly of lavender and read, "You are not invisible. I see you. You are not what happened to you. You are still whole." Carla read the note 5 times before she cried. Not loud, not with sobs, but with the kind of tears that had waited too long. She tucked the note into her math book like it was a secret spell. She didn't know where it came from. But that day she looked up more in class. She answered one question out loud. She smiled once, just once, when Ruby passed her a glue stick. What Carla didn't know was that Ada had written 10 versions of that note the night before. She didn't know which words were right. She only knew that words could be a bridge, and Carla needed one. Over the next few weeks, small changes took root. Carla's drawings began to show color again, still guarded, still cautious but blooming. One had a window with curtains and a bird perched outside. Another had 2 stick figures holding hands. Then, one Friday morning, as Carla unpacked her lunch, another note slipped out of her bag. This one wasn't handwritten. It was typed, official. It came from the school counselor, who had seen Carla tear up when a loud voice echoed through the hallway. The counselor had asked Carla gently, and to her own surprise, Carla spoke. Not everything, not at once, but enough. "I have a hard time at home," she had said. It started there. The counselor got involved. Child Protective Services did too. A case was opened. Investigations began. Carla's stepfather was asked to leave. Her mother began attending parenting classes. The world shifted, slowly, imperfectly, but in a better direction. No one knew how it started. Not the principal. Not the teacher. Not even the counselor, really. Only Ada did. But she never mentioned it. Never hinted. She didn't want thanks. She didn't want credit. She only wanted one thing. For Carla to feel visible. Weeks later, Carla left something behind on her desk after class. A simple drawing. It was a girl in a beige sweater standing in a hallway filled with children. The children were all gray outlines, but the woman was colored in with soft yellows and browns, her smile unmistakable. Beneath the drawing, Carla had written one sentence. "She saw me first. Ada found it while cleaning." She stared at it for a long time, her hand resting on her heart. Then she folded it gently, placed it in her cloth bag, and walked on to the next classroom, where more children waited in silent battles no one else noticed. She knew her work wasn't over, and that was the beauty of Ada. She didn't fix the world. She just made sure no one fell through the cracks, without knowing they mattered. Mr. Bell's pie. If Ada was the soul of Marigold, elementary, Mr. Bell was its spine. He'd been the school's janitor for over 20 years, though the title never quite fit him. Janitor, as if all he did was mop floors and change light bulbs. In truth, he was the first one there every morning and the last one to leave. He knew the pipes that groaned in winter and which doors stuck when it rained. He remembered kids' names long after they'd moved away, and he had a soft spot for third graders, who got lost in hallways. But Mr. Bell had grown tired. Not tired like you do after a long day. This was soul tired, the kind of tired that settles behind the eyes and wraps itself around your shoulders, heavy and unshakable. His knees ached more than they used to. The school had a new principal now, one who favored spreadsheets over stories, numbers over names, and the budget cuts had come quickly, slicing through the staff like winter wind. The morning it happened. Mr. Bell didn't come inside. His truck was parked at the far end of the lot. Engine off, windows fogged with the breath of a man trying not to cry. But he was, crying, shoulders hunched, face in his hands. He had just been told, bluntly and without ceremony, that his contract was not being renewed. Nothing personal, they had said, but it always is. Ada saw him. She had arrived early, as usual, her footsteps soft against the pavement. She didn't knock on the window. She didn't ask questions. She simply walked away, quietly, back to her cottage. That night, she baked apple with a crumble topping. He had once mentioned it was his favorite back when his wife used to make it. She hadn't been around for a long time, and he didn't talk much about what happened. Ada didn't pry. She just remembered. The next morning, she left the pie on the hood of his truck, wrapped in a tea towel, with a handwritten note tucked under the dish. You are not your job. You are not your title. You are still needed. You are still loved. He found it before the sun had fully risen. For a long moment, he just stared at the pie, as if unsure it was real. Then he opened the note. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the sudden realization that someone had noticed his pain. He didn't eat the pie right away. He sat in the truck, reading the note again and again. And when he finally lifted the towel and inhaled the warm scent of apples and cinnamon, he cried again, but differently this time. Not from loss. From being seen. That same day, a few of the teachers noticed the trash wasn't taken out, and the floors still had yesterday's chalk prints. But Ada didn't say a word. Instead, she cleaned the halls herself after her regular shift, quietly, without asking for help. She knew Mr. Bell needed a day to breathe. By Monday, Mr. Bell was back, not as the janitor, but as a volunteer. The school wouldn't pay him anymore, but Ada had spoken to a few parents, and they had started a quiet fund to cover his gas. They didn't want to lose him. Not really. And when enough people care, even budgets can bend. He stayed on, unpaid but fulfilled, fixing things no one else could, telling jokes to the kids as they passed by, whistling low tunes that filled the hallways with memory. He kept Ada's note in his wallet, behind his ID card. He touched it when the days felt long. Years later, when a new principal arrived, one who valued hearts as much as handbooks, Mr. Bell was officially rehired, but he still called himself retired. I'm not here for the money, he'd say, winking. I'm here because someone made sure I knew I was still worth something. One afternoon, he left a slice of apple pie in the supply closet with a sticky note. To the woman who remembered who I was when I forgot myself. B. Ada found it after her shift. She sat on the small bench inside the closet and took one bite. Then she smiled the kind of smile that said everything words never could. The girl who didn't want to speak, Ruby, never spoke. Not a whisper. Not even a murmur. Her lips moved only to eat. Her eyes darted like birds startled by the wind. She sat in the second row, third desk from the left, always the same seat, and never raised her hand. Her silence wasn't born of defiance. It was born of something deeper, something broken. The teachers had theories. Selective mutism, one said. "A trauma response," said another. But theories don't comfort children. They don't sit with them at lunch or offer sanctuary when the world is too loud. That was Ada's role. She first noticed Ruby's silence not by what was missing, but by what remained. Ruby's eyes were observant, too observant for her age. She saw everything. The twitch in the teacher's smile when she was tired, the limp in Mr. Bell's right leg, the way some students counted bites of food like rationing was instinct. Ruby didn't speak, but she saw, and seeing is its own kind of language. Ada began her approach with something simple. Chalk.every. Day after school, Ada would write a small message in rainbow, chalk on the pavement just outside Ruby's classroom door. It was never addressed to anyone, but it was always for Ruby. The stars don't speak, but we still know they shine. You don't have to roar to be a lion. Silence can hold more truth than noise. Ruby never reacted. Not at first. She simply walked past them, her small feet scuffing the edges of the letters, her eyes carefully not looking. But Ada noticed the glances, the faint lingering of her shadow, the way she paused her steps just a beat longer each day. One Wednesday, the message read, "If you want, you can answer with color." That afternoon, as Ada swept the back hallway, she passed the spot again and stopped. Beneath her message in purple chalk was a small heart, lopsided, imperfect, beautiful Ada, smiled so wide it brought tears to her own eyes. She didn't say a word, just knelt beside it and drew a yellow sun next to the heart. It became their ritual. Messages in the morning, responses in color. Some days Ruby drew shapes, a moon, a tree, a raindrop. Other days it was symbols Ada interpreted with care. Once Ruby left a single blue star surrounded by gray clouds. That day, Ada left a message. Even behind clouds, the star is still a star. There were still no words, no sounds, but a bridge had formed, quiet and sturdy. One afternoon, a substitute teacher who didn't know Ruby's history asked her to read aloud in class. The room went still. Ruby froze, her lips pressed together. Her hands trembled slightly. Ada, who had come to clean the windows, stepped quietly into view. She didn't speak, didn't interrupt, just picked up a small piece of chalk from her pocket and placed it gently on Ruby's desk. Ruby looked down, then up, and nodded once. "I'd like to pass," she whispered. It was one word, but it was everything. The class moved on. The teacher blinked in surprise, and Ada, without saying a thing, walked out into the hallway, her eyes wet. From then on, Ruby began whispering occasionally, a word to her seatmate, a quiet thank you when handed a pencil. And though she still communicated mostly in chalk, her voice was no longer a myth. It was becoming a melody, soft, tentative but growing. One day, she left a drawing in the hallway, a picture of Ada in her beige sweater, sitting beneath a tree. Ruby had drawn herself beside her, both of them smiling, surrounded by stars. At the bottom, Ruby had written clearly, in crooked letters, "She spoke to me without needing sound." Ada found it that evening. She didn't need a frame for it. She carried it home, folded with care, and taped it beside her mirror where her handwritten notes already lived. "Love listens louder than words," she added in her own handwriting, and every morning after that, Ada carried chalk in her pocket, not because she needed to, but because someone once needed her to. The medal in the bread box every Saturday. Ada visited Mr. Henry. He lived 2 streets over in a house that looked like time had folded it gently and left it there to rest. The shutters were crooked. The paint was peeling. And yet it had a kind of dignity, like an old man in a well-worn suit. That fit Mr. Henry perfectly. No one really remembered how long Mr. Henry had lived in Marigold. Some said he'd fought in a war. Others thought he'd once been a schoolteacher. Most of the kids in town just thought of him as the man who talks to birds. He fed them from his porch with crusts of toast and seeds he saved in an old cookie tin. He rarely left the house. Arthritis had settled in his bones like an unwanted guest, and loneliness had become a second skin. His children were far away, his wife long gone. Time had not been gentle with him, but Ada had. Each Saturday morning, without fail, she brought him bread. Fresh, warm, soft in the center with a browned crust that reminded him of his wife's baking. She never stayed long, just enough to set the loaf on his table, sweep the floor if it needed it, and ask how his birds were doing. Still arguing like church ladies, he'd say with a grin that Saturday, as Ada stepped inside with a new loaf. She found him sitting at the table, staring into a wooden bread box. It was open, empty, except for something that glinted in the morning light. A medal, faded ribbon, tarnished metal, a name engraved so finely it had nearly vanished. "I was cleaning out the cabinet," he said, voice hoarse. "Forgot I put it in there." Ada sat beside him, the scent of yeast and cinnamon filling the air between them. "You earned it?" she asked gently. He nodded. "War, long time ago. Got it for pulling a man out of a burning tank. Lost 2 fingers for it." He held up his hand, scarred, crooked. Never liked looking at it, though. Reminded me of everything we lost. Ada was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up the medal, turning it over in her hands. It was heavier than it looked, as if carrying the memory of fire, of sacrifice, of silence that never left a soldier's heart. "You didn't just save a man," she said. "You saved a story. You saved children, grandchildren. You saved a piece of this world." He swallowed hard, blinking too quickly. "Doesn't feel like much now." Ada set the medal down, then reached into her bag and pulled out a cloth napkin. She wrapped the medal in it gently, like something sacred, and placed it in the center of the table. "Then let it be seen again," she said, "even if just by you. Some things don't lose their meaning with time. They grow it." He stared at the bundle. Then at Ada. "You know," he whispered. "You remind me of my wife. She used to say the smallest acts hold the longest echoes." Ada smiled. "She sounds wise." "She married me," he chuckled. "So probably not." They shared tea that morning, talked about birds, about the tree in his backyard that hadn't bloomed in 3 springs but still refused to die. Before Ada left, she noticed a photograph tucked behind an old toaster. Henry in uniform, arm around a young woman whose smile reached her eyes. "She looks like someone who loved deeply," Ada said. "She did," he replied, voice cracking. "She loved ordinary things and made them feel holy." Later that week, Ada returned with a small wooden shadow box. She'd found it in a thrift shop and cleaned it up. Inside, she pinned the medal, the photograph, and a handwritten note, "For the courage that never asked to be seen." She hung it on Henry's living room wall, above the window where the birds gathered, every time someone came by. And it wasn't often. Henry would point to the box and say, That's my wife's courage, and a little of Ada's too." The stains on the sweater. The child's name was Malik, 9 years old, tall for his age, skinny as a question mark. He had a habit of fiddling with the hem of his sleeves, pulling at loose threads until the cuffs unraveled. No one noticed when he started wearing the same sweater every day. Not right away. It was a navy blue hoodie with a tear at the shoulder and faded letters on the front that used to spell something, maybe a team, maybe a place. By the end of the week, Ada noticed the stains, small ones at first, then darker ones near the stomach, like spilled soup or grease. She saw him try to rub them off with a paper towel in the restroom. She saw him walk with his head down, arms crossed, eyes avoiding everyone else's. Children can be cruel in the quietest ways. A look, a smirk, a whisper just loud enough. She asked the school nurse if anyone had checked in with Malik. "Not that I know of," came the reply. "His records say he's new. Foster care, I think. Bounced around a few times." That night, Ada didn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking of a little boy alone in a strange house, trying to stay invisible in a school full of noise. She thought about how a child might wear the same sweater not because he liked it, but because it was the only one he had. By morning, she had a plan. She went to the local thrift store with a small envelope of money she had saved from cleaning an extra house the weekend before. She searched through racks of sweaters, holding each one up as if she could see Malik inside it. Eventually, she found 3, one soft gray, one forest green, and one with a faded dragon on the front. She washed them that afternoon, dried them with lavender sheets, folded them neatly and slipped a note into the pocket of the dragon. "Hoodie, you are not what you wear. You are not what you lack. You are not alone." The next morning, she placed the bag quietly in Malik's cubby. Before class started, she didn't stay to see his reaction, but she heard about it. Teacher mentioned it in the lounge. Malik showed up wearing the green sweater today. Smiled during reading time. First time I've seen that boy smile. The dragon hoodie appeared 2 days later, then the gray one. The navy blue hoodie disappeared quietly, folded and placed on the lost and found shelf. as if Malik was ready to let it go. He didn't speak to Ada, not for weeks. But one day, as she was scrubbing a sticky juice stain from a classroom floor, he paused in the doorway. "You wrote the note, didn't you?" he asked softly. Ada didn't turn around. She just kept scrubbing. "Maybe," she said. Malik stepped closer. "No one's ever given me clothes that smelled like something good before." Ada looked up then, her eyes kind. "You deserve soft things," she said, "even if the world forgot to give them to you." He nodded, then walked away. The next day, Ada found a folded piece of paper under her mop bucket. It was a drawing, crude, done in pencil. A boy in a green sweater standing beside a woman with curly hair and a bucket. They were both smiling. Above them, in shaky block letters, he'd written, "Thank you for seeing me before I even said a word." She taped it inside her locker next to Ruby's chalk heart and Mr. Henry's metal quote, "Each act, each quiet, kindness" was becoming part of Ada's private gallery. Not one of portraits, but of proof that ordinary love, offered freely, can rewrite stories that once felt doomed. She never asked for thanks, but she treasured every sign that what she gave, softness, dignity, attention, was being received by children who had long learned to expect nothing. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, there's more to come. The miracle of the ordinary continues in the next part, and you won't want to miss it. If you'd love to read the full journey, you can grab your copy of the book on Amazon.com and experience every chapter, every tear, every quiet miracle that lives between the pages. To all our dear subscribers, both new and old, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Your support means more than words can say. You make it possible to keep sharing stories that heal, inspire, and remind us what truly matters. And always remember, you don't have to be famous to be unforgettable. Sometimes the greatest light comes from the most unexpected places. Stay kind. Stay human. See you in the next chapter.